Sarah Chen opened her eyes slowly. Her head hurt. Everything hurt. She tried to move her arms, but they wouldn't respond right away. The last thing she remembered was the bright lights of the alien ships surrounding her small research vessel. Then there had been a sound like thunder, and everything went dark. Now she was lying on something cold and hard. The room around her glowed with a soft blue light. The walls looked like they were made of crystal or glass. She could see through them, but everything outside was blurry. Sarah pushed herself up to sitting. Her body ached, but nothing seemed broken. "Where am I?" she whispered to herself. The room was small, maybe 10 feet on each side. There was no door that she could see, no windows, just the strange glowing walls. Sarah stood up on shaky legs and walked to the nearest wall. It felt smooth and cold, like ice, but it didn't melt. Sarah was a commander in the Earth Space Exploration Program. She had spent 5 years traveling through deep space, studying new planets and looking for signs of other life. 3 weeks ago, her sensors had picked up strange energy readings from this sector of space. The readings were unlike anything humans had ever seen before. Against orders, Sarah had decided to investigate. That decision had been a mistake. The alien fleet had appeared without warning. Their ships were massive, each one bigger than Earth's largest space station. Sarah's little research vessel looked like a toy next to them. She had tried to run, but they caught her in seconds. Some kind of energy beam had shut down all her systems. Then everything went black. Now she was their prisoner. Sarah walked around the cell, looking for any weakness, any way out. There was nothing. She sat down on the floor and tried to think. Her crew was dead. They had to be. The aliens had fired on her ship before capturing her. She was alone. Hours passed, or maybe days. It was hard to tell in the blue glow. Sarah tried to stay calm. She did push-ups and sit-ups to keep her body moving. She sang songs from her childhood to keep her mind sharp. She refused to give in to fear. Then the wall in front of her changed. The blurry view suddenly became clear, and Sarah found herself staring at something that made her breath catch. The alien was enormous. It stood at least 9 feet tall, with 4 arms and skin that looked like dark purple metal. Its head was long and narrow, with 6 eyes arranged in 2 rows. Each eye glowed with a fierce red light. The creature wore armor that seemed to be made from the same crystal material as Sarah's prison. This was clearly someone important, someone powerful. Sarah stood up. She wouldn't meet this creature while sitting on the ground like a beaten dog. She looked directly into those 6 red eyes and waited. The alien spoke, and somehow Sarah could understand the words. Maybe there was a translator somewhere in the cell. "I am Queen Zerathol the Eternal, ruler of the Vrextal Empire. You have entered forbidden space, human. This is an act of war." Sarah took a breath. Her heart was pounding, but she kept her voice steady. "I am Commander Sarah Chen of Earth. I didn't know this space was forbidden. We're explorers, not warriors." The queen moved closer to the transparent wall. "Explorers," she repeated. The word sounded like an insult in her mouth. "Your species is young, weak. You have barely left your own star system. What gives you the right to wander through space that belongs to others?" "Space doesn't belong to anyone," Sarah said. "It's infinite. There's room for everyone." One of the queen's eyes seemed to narrow. "You are either brave or foolish, human. Most creatures beg for their lives when they meet me. They cry, they offer me treasures, they promise me anything I want. But you stand there and argue philosophy." "Would begging change anything?" Sarah asked. "Would it make you let me go?" The queen was silent for a long moment. "No," she finally said. "It would not." "Then why waste my breath?" Sarah crossed her arms. "Why don't you tell me what you really want? You didn't keep me alive just to watch me cry." The queen tilted her head, studying Sarah like a scientist studying an interesting bug. I want information about your species, your military strength, your defenses, your weaknesses. I want to know everything about humanity before I decide what to do with your world." Sarah's blood ran cold. "You're planning to invade Earth?" "Perhaps, if your species is worth conquering. If not, we will simply eliminate you. Either way, you will tell me what I need to know." "I won't tell you anything that could harm my people," Sarah said firmly. The Queen made a sound that might have been laughter. "You say that now, but I have methods. I have broken warriors who have lived for centuries. You are young, fragile. You will break quickly." "Maybe," Sarah admitted, "but you'll have to break me. I won't just give you what you want." The Queen stared at her for a long time. Sarah forced herself to keep eye contact, even though every instinct screamed at her to look away. Those 6 red eyes felt like they were looking into her soul. "Interesting," the Queen finally said. "Most humans would have collapsed in fear by now. Our intelligence reports suggested your species was weak, emotional, easy to control. Your intelligence was wrong. Perhaps, or perhaps you are unusual for your kind." The Queen turned away from the wall. "We shall see, Commander Sarah Chen. I will give you time to think about your situation. Time to realize that you have no hope of escape, no hope of rescue. Your ship is destroyed. Your crew is dead. You are alone, millions of light years from home. When you truly understand this, when the reality crushes your spirit, then we will talk again." The wall turned blurry once more. The Queen was gone. Sarah stood there for a long time, staring at nothing. Then she sat down on the cold floor and wrapped her arms around her knees. She thought about Earth, about her family, about the green parks and blue oceans she might never see again. A single tear ran down her cheek. Then she wiped it away, took a deep breath, and started doing push-ups again. The Queen wanted to break her spirit. Sarah would show her what humans were really made of. The lights in Sarah's cell went out. It happened suddenly, without warning. One moment there was the soft blue glow. The next moment, complete darkness. Not the darkness of a room at night, where your eyes adjust and you can see shadows. This was absolute, total. Sarah held her hand in front of her face and saw nothing. She waited for something to happen, for the lights to come back on, for the Queen to speak. But there was only silence, deep, heavy silence that pressed against her ears. Sarah understood immediately. This was the first test. She had read about sensory deprivation in her training, how it could break a person's mind faster than any physical torture. Without light, without sound, without any sensation to anchor yourself to reality, the human brain started to create its own inputs. Hallucinations, paranoia, madness. The Queen wanted to see how long Sarah would last. Sarah sat down carefully, feeling the floor beneath her. At least she still had touch. She pressed her palms flat against the cold surface and took slow, steady breaths. "Okay," she whispered to herself, "you can do this." But could she? How long would the darkness last? Days? Weeks? Time became meaningless almost immediately. Without day or night, without any change in her environment, Sarah couldn't tell if an hour had passed or 10 hours. She tried counting seconds in her head, but she kept losing track. She slept when she was tired and woke in the same perfect darkness. To keep her mind from slipping, Sarah started talking to herself. She recited every poem she had memorized in school. She sang every song she could remember. She told herself stories from books she had read as a child. When she ran out of those, she made up new stories. She thought about her childhood in Seattle, the rain on the windows, the smell of her mother's cooking, her father teaching her to read star charts. She held on to these memories like treasures, turning them over and over in her mind. Sarah also exercised. She did push-ups and sit-ups and jumping jacks in the darkness. She walked around the perimeter of her cell, counting steps. 12 steps across, 12 steps back, over and over. Movement helped. It reminded her that she was still real, still alive. Sometimes she thought she heard things, whispers in the dark, footsteps. But when she stopped to listen, there was nothing, just her imagination trying to fill the silence. The hardest times were when she woke up from sleep. For a few seconds, she would forget where she was. She would expect to see her quarters on the ship, or her bedroom back on Earth. Then reality would crash back. The darkness, the silence, the utter loneliness. During those moments, Sarah wanted to scream, to cry, to pound on the walls and beg them to turn the lights back on. But she didn't. Sarah refused to give her that satisfaction. Instead, Sarah started doing mathematics in her head. Complex equations, calculating orbital trajectories, anything to keep her brain working. She recited the periodic table. She listed every planet in the known galaxy in alphabetical order. She reconstructed the entire layout of her ship from memory, room by room, wire by wire. She had no idea how much time had passed. It felt like months, but it might have been only days. Then suddenly, the lights came back on. Sarah cried out and covered her eyes. The blue glow felt like staring at the sun. It took several minutes before she could open her eyes without pain. When she finally looked up, the Queen was standing on the other side of the transparent wall. 3 weeks, the Queen said. You have been in darkness for 3 weeks. Most creatures break within 3 days. Some last a week. But 3 weeks? The Queen's 6 eyes studied Sarah carefully. How did you survive? Sarah stood up slowly. Her legs were shaky. She knew she must look terrible, dirty, thin, exhausted. But she was still herself, still sane. I kept my mind busy, Sarah said. Her voice was rough from lack of use. Doing what? Thinking, remembering, calculating. Humans are good at adapting. The Queen tilted her head. Interesting. Most species we test either go mad or fall into despair. You have done neither. Sarah shrugged. Is that all you've got? Something flickered in the Queen's eyes. Surprise, maybe, or respect. No, human, that was only the beginning. The wall in front of Sarah lit up like a screen. She saw Earth, beautiful blue Earth, but something was wrong. There was fire. Huge cities were burning. Ships filled the sky, raining destruction down on the planet. Sarah saw people running, screaming, buildings collapsing. This is happening right now, the Queen said. While you have been in the darkness, my fleet has reached your homeworld. Your people are dying. Your cities are falling. This is the price of your defiance. Sarah's heart stopped. She stared at the images, feeling sick. She saw familiar landmarks being destroyed. The Eiffel Tower falling. The Great Wall crumbling. New York City in flames. Then she saw something that broke her heart. Her family. Her mother. Her father. Her brother. The image showed them in what looked like a refugee camp. They looked thin and scared. As Sarah watched, an explosion rocked the camp. The screen went dark. No, Sarah whispered. Tears streamed down her face. No, no, no. Your planet is conquered, the Queen said. Your species will be slaves. This is what happens when primitives challenge the Rextal Empire. But you can still save some of them. Tell me what I want to know. Give me intelligence about human resistance movements, and I will spare your family. Sarah fell to her knees. The grief was overwhelming. Everything she had fought for, everything she had endured, it had all been for nothing. Earth was gone. Her family was probably dead. But something nagged at the back of her mind. Something didn't feel right. Sarah looked up at the Queen through her tears. When did your fleet leave for Earth? She asked. The Queen seemed surprised by the question. What does it matter? Just tell me. 2 weeks ago. Sarah felt something click in her mind. That's impossible. Earth is 7 months away from here at maximum speed, even for your ships. The Queen said nothing. This is fake, Sarah said, standing up slowly. The grief was still there, still real, but now it was mixed with anger. You showed me fake footage to break me. Does it matter if it is real or fake? It will happen eventually. Your world will fall. Everyone you love will die or become slaves. This is certain. Sarah wiped her eyes. Maybe, but it hasn't happened yet. And as long as my people are still free, I have a reason to fight. I have a reason to keep my mouth shut. You would rather hold on to hope than save yourself? The Queen sounded genuinely puzzled. I'm not trying to save myself, Sarah said. I'm trying to save my people. And giving you information won't do that. It will just make it easier for you to destroy them. The Queen stared at her for a long moment. You are either the bravest creature I have ever met, or the most foolish. Probably both, Sarah admitted. The screen went dark. The Queen began to turn away, then paused. Tomorrow I will make you an offer. Think carefully about it. Then she was gone, and Sarah was alone again. But this time, the lights stayed on. Sarah sat down and put her head in her hands. She was exhausted, emotionally drained, but she was still herself, still fighting. The Queen had tried to break her with darkness and with false hope. Both had failed. Sarah wondered what would come next. The Queen returned the next day, just as she had promised. Sarah was sitting on the floor, trying to estimate how much weight she had lost. Her uniform hung loose on her frame. The Vrextal had been giving her food and water through a slot that appeared in the wall, but it wasn't much, just enough to keep her alive. Commander Chen, the Queen said. She stood on the other side of the transparent wall, all 4 arms crossed over her armored chest. I have a proposition for you. I'm listening, Sarah said carefully. You have proven to be more resilient than I expected. The darkness did not break you. The false images of your world's destruction did not break you. This is admirable. The Queen seemed to struggle with that last word, like it tasted strange. I could continue with more tests, more pain, but I am beginning to think that approach will not work with you. So what do you want? Join my court as an advisor on human affairs. Help me understand your species. In return, I will give you food, comfort, freedom to move about this ship. You will live in luxury instead of this cell. Sarah raised an eyebrow. And in exchange, I betray my entire species. Not betray, advise. There is a difference. The Queen moved closer to the wall. Your world will be conquered eventually. This is inevitable. Nothing you do will change that. But you could help make the transition peaceful. You could save billions of lives by helping me understand the best way to integrate humanity into my empire. It was a tempting offer. Sarah couldn't deny that. She was tired, hungry, lonely. The thought of getting out of this cell, of having actual food, of talking to someone besides herself. It was almost overwhelming. But she knew it was a trap. No, Sarah said simply. No? The Queen sounded surprised. You would rather stay in this cell? Rather starve? Rather die alone and forgotten? Yes. Sarah stood up and walked to the wall, looking the Queen directly in her 6 red eyes. Because the moment I agree to help you, I become worthless. Not just to you, but to myself. If I'm willing to sell out my own people to make my life easier, then what kind of person am I? What would my life even mean? The Queen was silent for a long moment. I do not understand your kind, she finally said. What don't you understand? This concept of honor, of sacrifice, of choosing suffering over comfort for the sake of abstract principles. The Queen gestured with one of her 4 hands. In my empire, the strong survive and the weak perish. Those who betray others to save themselves are considered wise, practical. Why do humans think differently? Sarah thought about how to explain it, because we're not just trying to survive as individuals, we're trying to survive as a species, as a culture, as an idea. If I betrayed humanity to save myself, I might live longer, but everything that makes me human would die. That makes no sense. Maybe not to you, Sarah said, but it makes sense to us. The Queen studied her for a long time. Then, to Sarah's surprise, she waved a hand, and a door appeared in the crystal wall. The Queen stepped through into Sarah's cell. Sarah backed up instinctively. The Queen was massive up close, towering over her. But the alien made no aggressive moves. She simply stood there, looking down at Sarah with those glowing red eyes. "Tell me about humanity," the Queen said quietly. "Why?" "Because you have made me curious. I have conquered hundreds of worlds, thousands of species, but none of them have acted like you. I want to understand." Sarah hesitated. This could be another trick, another test, but something in the Queen's voice sounded genuine. And honestly, Sarah was desperate for real conversation after weeks of isolation. "What do you want to know?" Sarah asked. "Everything. Your history, your culture, why you do the illogical things you do." So Sarah talked. She told the Queen about Earth's history, about the wars and the peace treaties, about art and music and literature. She explained how humans had nearly destroyed themselves multiple times, but always found a way to pull back from the brink. The Queen listened without interrupting. Sometimes she asked questions. Her questions were sharp and intelligent, cutting right to the heart of things. As they talked, Sarah began to see the Queen differently. Not as a monster, but as a person. A very alien person, but still someone with thoughts and feelings and questions. "Why do humans create art?" the Queen asked at one point. "What purpose does it serve?" "It doesn't serve a purpose," Sarah said. "That's the point. Art exists because we want it to exist, because it makes us feel something, because it reminds us that we're more than just survival machines. The Vrextal do not create art. We create weapons. We create ships. We create tools for conquest." "That sounds lonely," Sarah said quietly. The Queen looked at her strangely. "Lonely? I rule billions of beings. I am never alone." "That's not the same thing as having someone who understands you." Something flickered across the Queen's face. For just a moment, she looked sad. Then the expression was gone. These conversations became a pattern. Every day, the Queen would come to Sarah's cell. They would talk for hours. The Queen asked about human philosophy, about why people fell in love, about why Sarah had chosen to become an explorer. Sarah asked about Vrextal history, about the Queen's long life, about what it was like to rule an empire. Sarah learned that the Vrextal had once been prey animals. Thousands of years ago, they were hunted by larger predators on their homeworld. They had evolved intelligence and eventually wiped out those predators. Then, they had wiped out every other species on their planet that could threaten them. Then, they had gone to the stars and continued the same pattern. "We swore we would never be prey again," the Queen explained. "The only way to be safe is to dominate everything around you." "But you're not safe," Sarah said. "You're trapped. You spend your whole life conquering because you're afraid of what might happen if you stop." The Queen's eyes flashed with anger. "You dare to speak to me of fear? You who are my prisoner?" "Yes," Sarah said calmly, "because I see it in you. You're afraid that if you stop being a conqueror, you won't know who you are anymore." The Queen raised one of her hands, and for a moment Sarah thought she might strike her. But then, the hand lowered. The Queen turned away. "You are wrong," the Queen said quietly. "Am I?" Before the Queen could answer, an alarm blared throughout the ship. Red lights flashed. The Queen's head snapped up, and she barked something in her own language. A voice responded through hidden speakers, urgent and forceful. The Queen turned back to Sarah. There is an attack on my ship. Rebels from within my own empire. Stay here. Do not try to escape." Then she was gone, the door sealing behind her. Sarah stood alone in her cell as the ship shook around her. She could hear distant explosions, screams, the sound of weapons fire. She looked at the sealed door. The Queen had told her to stay, but Sarah was still a prisoner. If the rebels won, they would probably kill her along with everyone else. She needed to decide what to do. The ship shook again, harder this time. Sarah was thrown against the wall. More alarms blared. Through the transparent barrier, she could see Vrextall soldiers running past, their weapons drawn. Sarah pressed herself against the wall and tried to understand what was happening. The rebels were attacking the ship from inside. That meant they were already aboard. This wasn't a battle between ships. This was a civil war. Suddenly, there was a hissing sound. Sarah looked down and saw green gas seeping into her cell through the ventilation system. Her eyes started to burn immediately. She coughed, covering her mouth with her hand. Poison gas. The rebels must have damaged the environmental controls. The gas was spreading through the ship, and Sarah's cell was filling with it. She pounded on the wall, but it was solid. No one could hear her over the sounds of battle. Sarah's lungs burned. She fell to her knees, gasping for air that wasn't there. The room started to spin. She thought about her family, about Earth, about how she would die here, alone, millions of miles from home. Then the door burst open. Through the green haze, Sarah saw a familiar massive figure. The Queen grabbed Sarah with two of her forearms and dragged her out of the cell. Sarah's legs wouldn't work properly. She coughed and choked as the Queen pulled her down the corridor. "Breathe slowly," the Queen commanded. "The medical bay is close." They stumbled through hallways filled with smoke and chaos. Bodies lay on the floor, both rebels and loyalists. Weapons fire echoed from nearby corridors. The Queen shielded Sarah with her own body as they ran. They reached the medical bay. The Queen threw Sarah onto a bed and pressed a mask over her face. Clean air flooded Sarah's lungs. She coughed violently, her whole body shaking. The Queen worked quickly, attaching tubes and monitors to Sarah's body. "Why?" Sarah gasped between coughs. "Why did you save me?" The Queen didn't answer. She just kept working, her 6 eyes focused on the medical displays. Slowly, Sarah's breathing eased. The burning in her lungs faded. She could think clearly again. The Queen had risked her life to save a prisoner. It didn't make sense. "You should have left me," Sarah said quietly. "Yes," the Queen agreed. "I should have. It would have been logical, practical. You are my enemy." "Then why didn't you?" Sarah asked. The Queen finally looked at Sarah. For the first time, those red eyes didn't look fierce or threatening. They looked confused. "I do not know," she said. "When I saw you dying, I acted without thinking. By the time I realized what I was doing, I was already at your cell." Before Sarah could respond, an explosion rocked the medical bay. Through the door, Sarah could see rebel soldiers advancing down the corridor. They were heading this way. The Queen stood up, reaching for her weapon. But there were too many rebels. Even the mighty Queen couldn't fight them all. Sarah looked around the medical bay. She was weak from the gas, but alive. The Queen had medical equipment scattered around the room. Supplies, tools, maybe weapons. Sarah's mind raced. She was a prisoner. This wasn't her fight. If she stayed quiet, maybe the rebels would let her live. They might even let her go. She could steal a shuttle and escape back to Earth to warn them about the Vrextall. But the rebels were chanting something as they advanced. Sarah couldn't understand the words, but the Queen's face went pale. "What are they saying?" Sarah asked. "They say they will kill me and install a new ruler, one who will be even more ruthless than I am. One who will conquer more worlds, enslave more species." The Queen looked at Sarah. "Including yours." Sarah understood. If the Queen died, Earth's situation would get worse, not better. At least the Queen could be reasoned with. At least she had shown mercy by saving Sarah. These rebels sounded like they would show no mercy to anyone. Sarah made a decision that surprised even herself. She grabbed a piece of medical equipment, something that looked like a heavy metal scanner. "How many rebels?" she asked. The Queen stared at her. "What are you doing?" "Helping you." "How many?" 8, maybe 10. "You cannot fight them. You are weak, barely recovered." "I don't need to fight them all. I just need to slow them down." Sarah moved to the door. "Where are your loyal guards?" 2 corridors away, but they cannot reach us in time." "Then we buy them time." Sarah looked back at the Queen. "Do you trust me?" Then she nodded once. Sarah had been trained in military tactics at the academy, though she had chosen exploration instead of combat. But she remembered the lessons. When you were outnumbered and outgunned, you used the environment. You used surprise. You made every advantage count. The medical bay had one entrance. That was both a weakness and a strength. The rebels had to come through that single door. Sarah grabbed medical supplies and scattered them on the floor near the entrance. Liquids that would make the floor slippery. Sharp instruments that would hurt bare feet. She turned off most of the lights, leaving only dim emergency lighting. The Queen watched, understanding dawning in her eyes. She moved to the other side of the door, weapons ready. The rebels burst through the door. The first one slipped on the wet floor and fell. The second tripped over him. Sarah swung her makeshift club at the third rebel's head. The alien went down hard. The Queen fired from her position, taking down 2 more rebels. The others scattered, trying to find cover in the dark medical bay, but Sarah had planned for that. She threw a canister of something flammable at them. The Queen shot it, and it exploded in a ball of flame. The rebels retreated, shouting in their own language. They hadn't expected resistance. They certainly hadn't expected a human prisoner to be fighting alongside the Queen. But more rebels were coming. Sarah could hear them in the corridor. She was breathing hard, her lungs still weak from the gas. She couldn't keep this up much longer. Then she heard the most beautiful sound in the world, the heavy footsteps of the Queen's royal guard. They came around the corner, weapons blazing, and crashed into the rebels from behind. The battle was over in seconds. Sarah collapsed against the wall, exhausted. The Queen rushed to her side, catching her before she fell. "You fought for me," the Queen said. There was wonder in her voice. "You could have escaped, could have let them kill me, but you fought for me." "I told you," Sarah said weakly. "I don't give up easily. You are my prisoner. I have threatened your world. I have tortured you. Why would you save my life?" Sarah looked up at the towering alien Queen. "Because I've been talking to you for weeks now. I've seen who you really are under all that armor and those weapons. You're not evil. You're just scared. And I think you can change. I think you want to change. You just don't know how." The Queen was silent for a long moment. Then, to Sarah's shock, tears began to fall from those 6 red eyes. Real tears. The Queen's whole body shook. "I have lived for thousands of years," the Queen whispered. "I have conquered hundreds of worlds. I have destroyed civilizations. And in all that time, no one has ever shown me mercy. No one has ever believed I could be anything other than a conqueror." Sarah reached out and took one of the Queen's massive hands in her own small one. "Well," she said softly, "I believe in you." The Queen looked at their joined hands. Something fundamental shifted in her expression. When she looked back at Sarah, her eyes held something they had never held before. Sarah woke up in a bed that was far more comfortable than her cell floor. For a moment, she panicked, not knowing where she was. Then she remembered. The rebels, the fight, the Queen's tears. She sat up slowly. Her body ached everywhere, but the burning in her lungs was gone. She was in a large room with purple walls that glowed softly. Real furniture, real windows showing the stars outside. This wasn't a prison cell. The door opened, and the queen entered. She looked different somehow. Smaller, maybe, though that was impossible. Then Sarah realized what had changed. The queen wasn't wearing her armor. Instead, she wore simple robes. Without all that metal and crystal, she looked less like a weapon and more like a person. "You are awake," the queen said. "Good. The doctors said you would recover, but I wanted to see for myself." "How long was I unconscious?" 2 days. The poison gas damaged your lungs more than we thought. But you are healing." The queen sat down in a chair near the bed. It was strange seeing her sit like a normal person. "I have been watching over you." "You didn't need to do that." "Yes, I did." The queen leaned forward. "Sarah Chen, you saved my life. You had every reason to let me die. You could have escaped, could have returned to warn your people. But instead, you fought for me. Why?" Sarah had thought about this question a lot over the past weeks. "Because I saw something in you that made me think the galaxy would be better with you in it than without you. Even if you're my enemy, even if you've done terrible things, I believed you could change. And if you were wrong, if I cannot change, then I made a mistake, but at least I tried." Sarah met the queen's eyes. "That's what humans do. We try, we hope, we believe things can get better, even when all the evidence says they can't." The queen was quiet for a long time. "I have been thinking," she finally said. "For 2 days, while you slept, I sat here and thought about my life, about the thousands of years I have spent conquering, about all the worlds I have destroyed, all the species I have enslaved. And I am tired, Sarah. So tired. I have spent millennia being afraid. Afraid that if I stopped conquering, someone would conquer me. That if I showed weakness, I would be destroyed. But you showed me something I had forgotten. You showed me that true strength is not in dominating others. It is in choosing mercy when you could choose vengeance. It is in believing in someone even when they have given you no reason to." Sarah felt her heart beat faster. "What are you saying?" The queen stood up and walked to the window. She looked out at the stars for a long moment. Then she turned back to Sarah. "I am saying that I am canceling the invasion of Earth." Sarah couldn't breathe. "What?" "Effective immediately. Your world is safe." The queen held up one hand. "But more than that, I am going to propose something that has never been done in the history of the Rextal Empire. I am going to propose an alliance with humanity." Sarah's mind was spinning. This couldn't be real. It had to be another test. Another trick. "Why?" she whispered. "Because you have taught me something that my empire forgot long ago. You have taught me that there is another way to live, not as conquerors and slaves, but as partners, as equals." The queen came back to the bed and knelt down so she was at eye level with Sarah. "My people have much to learn from yours, and I suspect your people have much to learn from mine. Together, we could be stronger than either of us alone." "Your empire won't accept this," Sarah said. "The rebels attacked you because they thought you were too soft. If you make peace with humans, they'll see it as weakness. Many will oppose this. Some will try to overthrow me again. But I am the queen. I have ruled for thousands of years, and I will rule for thousands more. I will make them understand." The queen's eyes hardened. "And if they cannot understand, I will make them obey." Sarah shook her head in wonder. "A week ago, you were planning to conquer Earth. Now you want to be allies. What changed?" "You changed everything," the queen said simply. "You showed me mercy when I deserved none. You fought for me when I was your enemy. You believed in me when I did not believe in myself. That kind of courage, that kind of hope, it is more powerful than any weapon I have ever seen." The queen reached out and took Sarah's hand. Her skin was rough and warm. I have conquered hundreds of worlds, Sarah Chen. But you conquered something far more difficult. You conquered my fear. You showed me that I could be something other than what I have always been. You showed me that change is possible. Tears were streaming down Sarah's face now. I didn't do anything special. I just refused to give up. That is what makes humans special. That stubborn refusal to surrender. That insistence on hoping even when hope seems foolish. The Queen smiled, and it was a real smile, warm and genuine. I want to learn more about that. I want my people to learn. Will you help us? Help you? How? Be our ambassador. Return to Earth and bring their leaders here. Help us forge this alliance. Show both our peoples that we can be better together than we are apart. Sarah thought about everything that had happened. The capture, the torture, the tests, the conversations, the battle. All of it had led to this moment. On one condition, Sarah said. Name it. No more conquering. Not Earth, not any world. The Vrextal Empire stops expanding through force. You find other ways to grow. That will be difficult. It goes against everything my people have known for millennia. But yes, I agree. Then I'll help you. Sarah squeezed the Queen's hand. I'll be your ambassador. I'll help build this alliance. But Zarathul, you have to promise me something. What? Promise me you'll keep trying to change. That you won't give up when it gets hard. Because it will get hard. Your people will resist. Some will hate you for this. You'll doubt yourself, but you have to keep going. I promise, the Queen said. I have lived in fear for thousands of years. I do not want to live that way anymore. You have shown me a different path. I will walk it, no matter how difficult it becomes. Sarah nodded. Then we have a deal. 3 weeks later, Sarah stood on the bridge of a Vrextal shuttle, approaching Earth. Behind her, Queen Zarathul stood tall and regal, back in her armor, but somehow different, less threatening, more dignified. As Earth grew larger in the view screen, Sarah felt her heart swell. She was home. After months of captivity, torture, and uncertainty, she was finally home. But she wasn't returning as a refugee or a victim. She was returning as an ambassador. She carried with her a treaty that could change the entire galaxy. A treaty of peace and alliance between humanity and the Vrextal Empire. Are you nervous? The Queen asked quietly. Terrified, Sarah admitted. My people might not believe this is real. They might think you're tricking us. Some will want to fight rather than make peace. Then we will convince them together. We will show them that change is possible, that old enemies can become new allies. Sarah looked up at the massive alien queen who had captured her, tortured her, and then been transformed by her courage. You know, when I first met you, I thought you were a monster. I was a monster. In many ways, I still am. I have done terrible things that I can never undo. But you showed me that even monsters can choose to be better. That's the most human thing you've ever said. The Queen laughed, a deep rumbling sound that Sarah had never heard before. Perhaps I am learning more from you than I realized. As the shuttle entered Earth's atmosphere, Sarah thought about everything that had happened. She had gone into space looking for discovery, and had found something far more important. She had found proof that courage and hope could change the universe, that one person, standing firm in the darkness, could light a candle that illuminated the way for billions. The alien queen had been shocked by the bravery of her human prisoner. But Sarah had been equally shocked by the capacity for change in the heart of an ancient conqueror. Together they would build something new, something better, not through conquest, but through cooperation, not through fear, but through hope. The shuttle landed gently on the ground. Sarah took a deep breath and looked at the Queen. "Ready to change the galaxy?" she asked. The Queen's 6 red eyes glowed with determination, and for the first time in thousands of years, genuine joy. "Ready," she said. They walked down the ramp together, human and alien, prisoner and queen, into a future neither of them had imagined possible. And above them, the stars shone down on two species taking their first steps toward a new kind of greatness. The bravery of one human had started a revolution. Now, it was time to see how far that revolution could go.